The neon lights of Las Vegas shimmered like liquid gold across the boulevard, blurring through the glass of Gia Coleman's taxi window. She wasn't supposed to be here. Not like this. Not tonight. She was a woman who built everything from nothing. CEO of GLO Cosmetics, a clean beauty startup she'd grown from her own kitchen, now worth millions. Yet tonight, the woman who inspired thousands of young black women to believe in themselves felt utterly lost. "Come on, Gia," her best friend Nicole cheered, her laughter echoing through the bar. "For once in your life, have fun. You're in Vegas, not a boardroom." Gia smiled faintly. Her head spun from champagne and exhaustion. The past few months had been brutal, constant investor meetings, expansion plans, fake smiles. She felt like she'd been holding her breath for years. Maybe a night of forgetting wouldn't kill her. She remembered a glass of something sweet. Music, laughter, a man's voice, smooth, low, laced with mischief. And then nothing. When she woke, sunlight cut through half-closed curtains. Her head throbbed. A silk sheet slid down her shoulder, and she realized she wasn't alone. A man sat at the edge of the bed, shirt, half-unbuttoned, hair tousled like sin itself. Blue eyes, sharp jaw, smile like trouble. "Oh God," she whispered, "please tell me this is not." He lifted his hand. There on his finger was a gold band, and another on hers. "Good morning, Mrs. Whitmore," he said, voice calm and devastatingly amused. Gia froze. "What did you just call me?" He laughed. "You don't remember. You married me last night." Her pulse roared. "What?" "No, that's impossible. Vegas chapel, Elvis officiant, legal documents, the whole package." He smirked. "Though I'll admit, you cried during the vows. Very romantic." "I don't even know your name," she snapped. "Vaughn," he said. "Vaughn Whitmore." By afternoon, Gia was pacing her hotel room, phone pressed to her ear. "Nicole, what the hell did you do? I might have slipped something fun into your drink. Just a little boost. You drugged me. Relax. You were smiling and safe. I didn't know you'd marry a stranger." Gia hung up, heart pounding. The name Whitmore haunted her. Somewhere in her memory, that name belonged to money, power, legacy. But no, it couldn't be him. The Vaughn Whitmore. The tech billionaire whose company dominated half the West Coast. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Ms. Coleman, this is Harris and Associates. We're contacting you on behalf of our client, Mr. Vaughn Whitmore, regarding your pending divorce." Gia stared at the message. A divorce. From a man she didn't even remember saying, "I do to." 3 days later, at a luxury gala in Manhattan, Gia arrived early. Polished, poised, determined to bury the Vegas chaos. Her brand, GLO, was up for a partnership deal with Whitmore Global. If she secured it, she could expand across America. She didn't believe in luck. She believed in work, in control. She didn't believe in fairy tales, especially not after what her father told her. Before he left, love doesn't build empires. Discipline does. But when the doors opened and she saw him, tall, flawless white suit eyes that burned her breath, caught. He smiled like the universe was playing a joke only he understood. "Miss Coleman," he said, extending his hand. "I've been looking forward to meeting you." She froze. That voice, that jawline, that impossible blue gaze. "Vaughn Whitmore," she whispered. Or he said softly, tilting his head, "Should I say husband?" The world tilted. People around them smiled politely, unaware that her heart had just exploded inside her chest. He leaned in, his tone casual, but edged with fire. "Don't worry, darling. Our marriage may have been an accident, but I never do anything by accident." Gia's glass trembled in her hand. She'd built her whole life on reason, structure, and logic. And yet this stranger, this arrogant billionaire, had just lit a spark in her she couldn't explain. For the first time in years, Gia Coleman didn't feel in control. And somewhere inside her, that terrified her more than anything. Sometimes love doesn't arrive when you're ready. It arrives when your walls are highest and chooses to climb anyway. The Manhattan skyline shimmered like a river of light. Down below, cabs honked, people hurried. The city pulsed with a rhythm only ambition could understand. Inside a penthouse office on the 72nd floor of Whitmore Tower, Gia Coleman sat, her arms folded across her chest. "So let me get this right," she said, voice low but sharp as glass. "I'm legally married to your client under his fake Spanish identity after one drunk night in Vegas." Across from her, Ian Harris, Vaughn's personal attorney, swallowed hard. "Technically, yes. But stop." She leaned forward. "Whatever this is, I want it undone. Immediately." "Miss Coleman, my client isn't contesting that," Ian stammered. "He just asked for a short delay." "Delay?" Her eyes narrowed. "Why?" The door opened before he could answer. "Because I asked him to," came a voice from behind her. She turned, and there he was, Vaughn Whitmore, in a tailored gray suit, tie loose, that same disarming calm that seemed to command the air around him. The kind of man who didn't enter a room, he owned it. Gia's jaw clenched. "You have no right to be here." "On the contrary," he said, walking closer, "I have every right. You're my wife." "That was a mistake." "Was it?" His voice was silk and steel, or fate playing drunk. "Don't flatter yourself." He smiled faintly. "I'm not. I'm offering you a deal." She exhaled sharply, exhausted. "Of course you are." 30 days, he said simply. "That's all I need." She blinked. "For what?" "For my grandfather's will. If I'm not married by my 30th birthday, I lose control of Whitmore Global. We stay married for 1 month, make it look real, and after that, you'll get what you want. Freedom. And a generous settlement." Gia stared at him. The audacity was staggering. "So this is just about money?" He shrugged. "About inheritance, responsibility, family?" "No," she said coldly. "It's about manipulation. You think you can buy people, even their silence." "You think too little of me," Vaughn murmured. "No, I think exactly what you show the world." A tense silence stretched between them. Outside, Manhattan glowed like a sea of glass and fire. Finally, she said quietly, "I don't sell myself for anyone's legacy." "I'm not asking you to," he replied. "I'm asking you to lend me time." That night, Gia sat on the floor of her Brooklyn apartment, her laptop open, the unsigned divorce papers glowing white on the screen. Her friend Nicole's voice came through the speaker. "Girl, if I were you, I'd sign that contract. 30 days with a billionaire. That's like a paid vacation plus great skincare." Gia groaned. "You're impossible. I'm serious. He's hot rich, and you don't even have to love him." "That's the problem," Gia muttered. "Love isn't the risk here. Losing myself is." Nicole fell silent for a moment, then said softly, "You've been holding your world together for so long, Gia. Maybe it's okay to let it shake a little." Gia closed her eyes. Somewhere between fear and curiosity, a small voice whispered, "Maybe it's time." The next morning, a sleek black limousine idled outside her apartment. Vaughn leaned against it, sunglasses on, holding 2 coffees. "Black. No sugar," he said, handing her one. "You look like you don't trust me." "I don't," she replied, taking it anyway. "Good. You shouldn't." As the car glided through the city silence, filled the space between them. He studied her reflection in the tinted glass. You said in your last interview that no man would ever define your success. You read that I read everything about you. She turned her face toward the window. I'm not part of your empire, Vaughn. He smiled slightly. Not yet. When the elevator doors opened at Whitmore Global, whispers rippled across the marble lobby. Employees turned their heads discreetly, the black woman walking beside the white heir of a billion-dollar company. Gia felt every stare like a spotlight. Everyone's looking, she murmured. Let them. Vaughn said calmly. It's good for business. Whose business? She shot back. Ours. At lunch, Isabella Whitmore, the matriarch herself, appeared. Her poise was that of an actress who had never truly left the stage. So you're the one, Isabella said, her accent a soft trace of Barcelona. The woman who married my son in Las Vegas. Gia straightened. It wasn't exactly planned, Mrs. Whitmore. Neither was my marriage. Isabella smiled, eyes glimmering. And yet it survived. Gia blinked momentarily, disarmed. You don't disapprove. I disapprove of many things, dear. Love isn't one of them. Then, lowering her voice, she added, just don't let the world tell you who you are. In this family, that's the hardest fight. That night, the Whitmore Foundation hosted a gala, cameras, flashing, champagne flowing. Gia wore black velvet, her curls pinned into a crown of quiet defiance. Vaughn's hand brushed hers in public, a gesture half for the cameras, half for something real. When they danced, her voice was barely above a whisper. You're enjoying this too much, only because you're trying too hard not to. You think this is a game? No, he said softly, eyes never leaving hers. I think it's the most dangerous thing I've ever done. The orchestra swelled. For one moment, Gia forgot where she was, forgot the audience, forgot everything but the warmth of his palm and the look in his eyes. It terrified her. Days bled into weeks. 30 days of pretending, of handshakes, business meetings, and 1,000 stolen glances neither could explain. They argued, they laughed, they learned each other's silences. Late one night, Gia entered his office to return a forgotten document. Vaughn was asleep at his desk, tie loosened, face half in shadow. She stood there for a long moment watching him breathe. For the first time, he looked human. She quietly draped her blazer over his shoulders. He stirred, eyes half open. You don't have to take care of me. I wasn't, she said softly. You just looked cold. Still sound like care to me. Then you're hearing things. Maybe, he murmured, eyes closing again. Maybe I'm hearing you. Gia stood still, heart pounding, unsure whether to run or stay. When the news broke 2 days later, Whitmore's secret bride, trending across every outlet, Gia nearly threw her phone. The photos were from the gala. Him holding her waist. Her looking up at him like gravity itself had shifted. She stormed into his office. You told me this would stay private. I told you it would be temporary. He corrected evenly. You've turned my life into a headline. Then let's control the narrative. I don't play your PR games. He stepped closer. You already are. Vaughn, he stopped inches away. Tell me you don't feel it, Gia. Tell me you don't look at me and see what I see. She swallowed. I see a man who doesn't know how to separate business from desire. Maybe I don't want to. Then you'll lose both. Silence. Her breath trembled. His gaze didn't waver. 30 days, he whispered. You can hate me for 30 days. But after that, tell me if you still do. She said nothing, because she didn't know. The rain had begun early that morning, tapping softly against the glass walls of Vaughn's office. Manhattan was gray and restless, but inside, The air between Vaughn and Gia was even heavier. It had been 20 days since they'd agreed to the 30-day marriage. 20 days of pretending. 20 days of blurred lines neither dared to cross until now. Gia sat at the end of the conference table flipping through presentation slides for their joint campaign, GLO Whitmore, Global Beauty Meets Innovation. Her voice was calm, professional, detached. Vaughn hated how well she hid behind that mask. Our projected engagement metrics show a 22% growth, she said. We should launch the digital campaign next week. Good, he murmured, not looking at the screen. But what about you? She frowned. What about me? You haven't smiled in days. I'm not here to entertain you. I didn't ask for entertainment, he said softly. I asked for honesty. The silence that followed felt sharper than glass. Finally, Gia sighed, closing her laptop. Vaughn, this isn't a real marriage. It's a PR deal. I'm trying to protect both of our companies. Let's not confuse that with feelings. And what if I already am? His voice was quiet, but the words hit her like thunder. She froze. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't care about the contract anymore. That night, Gia found herself standing on the rooftop of Whitmore Tower, rain soaking through her blazer city lights, flickering like restless stars below. She'd built her whole life on discipline, on being untouchable. But now one man's sincerity was tearing her walls apart. Running from the storm, his voice came from behind her. She turned. Vaughn stood there, drenched rain dripping from his hair, tie loosened. He looked nothing like the man who signed billion-dollar deals. He looked human, hurting, real. You shouldn't be here, she whispered. Neither should you. Vaughn, please. Why do you keep pushing me away? Because this isn't real, she cried. It started as a business arrangement. He stepped closer, eyes searching hers. And what is it now? Her breath trembled. I don't know. Yes, you do. His voice dropped to a whisper. You're just afraid to admit it. Something inside her snapped, not in anger, but surrender. She turned away, but he caught her wrist gently, firmly. The contact sent a shiver up her arm. I've never met anyone like you, he said. You make me question everything I thought I wanted. Don't, she said, her voice breaking. You'll regret it. Maybe, he said. But at least I'll know it was real. Rain spilled between them like falling glass. She looked up at him, the man she swore she'd never let in, and saw something she didn't expect: truth. Then he stepped closer. His hand brushed her cheek, and she didn't pull away. Vaughn. He smiled faintly. Tell me to stop. She didn't. And when his lips met hers, it wasn't planned, wasn't perfect, but it was real. For one long, unguarded moment, time stood still. The next morning, Gia woke in her apartment, still wearing his jacket. She didn't remember how she got home, only the warmth of his voice when he'd said goodnight. Her reflection in the mirror looked the same, but everything inside her had shifted, and that terrified her. Her phone buzzed. A text from Vaughn. Coffee at 9, I promise no contracts. Just us. She hesitated, then replied, Fine. But I'm paying this time. When she arrived at the cafe, he was already there, sitting by the window. No suit today, just a sweater, rolled sleeves, and that impossible ease that made people turn to look twice. Morning, he said. Morning, she replied, sliding into the seat across from him. So, he began. Are we still pretending? She raised a brow. You tell me. He grinned. You're not very good at lying, you know. Neither are you, she said, but the corners of her lips curved despite herself. They talked for hours about work, childhood, the things they'd lost, and the people who shaped them. He told her about his father's death, the emptiness that came with inheritance. She told him about her mother's quiet strength about selling handmade lip balms at street fairs to pay rent. At one point, he looked at her and said, "You built yourself from nothing. I inherited everything. Maybe that's why you scare me." She blinked. "I scare you because you have nothing to prove, but everything to protect." And for the first time, Gia saw him not as the billionaire who complicated her life, but as a man fighting his own loneliness. Later that week, Vaughn invited Gia to a private dinner on the top floor of the tower. No photographers, no pretense, just candlelight wine and the city below. "You didn't have to do all this," she said softly. "I wanted to," he said. "For once, I wanted something that wasn't for the company, just for me." She looked at him, trying to find the trap in his sincerity, but there was none. The man across from her wasn't playing anymore. He poured her wine, his voice lower now. "You know what I realized. What business teaches you to plan for every risk? But love." He met her eyes. "Love is what happens when you stop planning." She looked down her throat tight. "You can't mix business with emotions, Vaughn. It never ends well. Maybe it doesn't have to end at all." Before she could answer, the door burst open. Ian Harris, his attorney, rushed in, face pale. "Mr. Whitmore, sorry, but you need to see this." On the tablet screen, a headline flashed. "Whitmore heirs, secret wife under investigation, insider trading accusations against GLO Cosmetics." Gia's heart stopped. The air in the room shifted. Vaughn's expression hardened instantly, eyes darkening. "What the hell is this?" she whispered. "Someone leaked your company's financials," Ian said. "Anonymous source claims insider trading between GLO and Whitmore Global. The media's eating it up." Gia turned to Vaughn. "You think I did this?" He hesitated for half a second, long enough for her to feel it like a blade. "Don't," she said, voice breaking. "Don't look at me like I'm one of them. Gia, I trusted you." She stood trembling. "I believed you were different. Let me handle this," he said, stepping closer. "No," she whispered. "You've handled me enough." She left without another word, and for the first time in his life, Vaughn Whitmore didn't know how to fix something, because this time it wasn't business. It was love, and he'd just broken it. For the first time in years, Gia didn't go to the office. She turned off her phone, shut the curtains, and let New York blur into silence. The scandal had hit the news like wildfire headlines, twisting every word, every photo, every glance she'd ever shared with Vaughn Whitmore. Billionaire's secret wife. Exposed. Insider. Leaks reveal. Pillow talk profits. The Vegas bride and the corporate heir. No one cared about the truth, only the story. By the third day, Gia's inbox was full of termination notices, partnerships frozen, and her company's investors demanding explanations. She'd worked her whole life for GLO, for the dream of independence, and in a single night, it was all tainted by a man she never truly knew. A knock echoed at her door. She froze. Then a voice she recognized. "It's me, Vaughn." Gia's pulse quickened. She wanted to tell him to go away, to scream, but her heart refused. She opened the door halfway. He looked exhausted. Tie-gone eyes, sunken jaw tight. The confident billionaire was nowhere to be found. "Don't you have press conferences to lie in?" she asked coldly. He winced. "I deserve that, but I didn't leak it." "Convenient." "I'm serious, Gia. Someone's trying to destroy both of us." "Us," she snapped. "There is no us. There's you, your empire, your legacy, and then there's me, the disposable cover story." He took a step closer. "You think I'd use you like that?" "I don't think," she said, her voice trembling. "I know. The air between them burned with everything unsaid. Finally, Vaughn exhaled, defeated. I'll prove it wasn't me. Just don't disappear. But she already had. When the door closed, the sound echoed like an ending. 2 weeks later, Gia boarded a flight to Boston. Not because she wanted to, but because she needed to. A quiet hidden thread in the investigation had led her there, a registered alias linked to the scandal's financial leak, Vladimir Bertram. She rented a car, drove through Cambridge rain, and stopped in front of a red brick townhouse with ivy crawling up its walls. Inside, an elderly housekeeper opened the door. "Good afternoon," Gia said politely. "I'm looking for Vladimir Bertram." The woman's eyes softened. "Oh, you mean Mr. Vaughn?" Gia froze. The housekeeper smiled wistfully. "He hasn't been here since his mother fell ill. Miss Isabella loved this house. She said this was the only place where he wasn't Whitmore, just her little boy Vlad." The name hit Gia like thunder. Vladimir Bertram Whitmore. Not an alias, a buried identity. She stayed overnight at a nearby inn, unable to sleep. Her thoughts raced through every word, every glance, every lie that now made sense. He'd told her he wanted 30 days for inheritance, but never said it was his second inheritance. The Bertram fortune, his mother's lineage, had once been exiled from the Whitmore empire after a family feud decades ago. By marrying Gia under the Bertram name in Vegas, Vaughn had technically fulfilled both sides of his inheritance contract. One, legal one, symbolic. He hadn't married her for convenience. He'd married her for freedom. She realized then that every time he'd said, "It's not what it looks like," he wasn't lying. She just hadn't known what to look for. At dawn, Gia drove back toward New York, her chest tight with something she couldn't name. Regret, maybe. Or the ghost of something bigger. Vaughn sat alone in his penthouse, the city below swallowed in fog. He hadn't slept in days. The board wanted him out. His grandfather had summoned him to Boston. His company's stocks had dropped 12%, but none of it hurt like the empty space on the couch where Gia used to sit. He replayed their last fight again and again. The way she looked at him, like he'd taken everything she built and crushed it. And maybe in some twisted way, he had. The intercom buzzed. "Sir, there's someone here to see you." He hesitated. "Who?" She wouldn't give her name. He didn't need to ask twice. The elevator doors opened, and there she was. Raincoat still damp, eyes fierce and tired. The sight of her nearly undid him. "Gia." "Before you say anything," she interrupted, "I went to Boston." His chest tightened. "You shouldn't have. I found the Bertram house." Silence. Then his voice dropped. "You weren't supposed to." "So it's true," she said. "Vladimir Bertram Whitmore, your real name." He looked away. "My mother's family was disowned when she married my father. I used her name when I married you to keep it off the Whitmore radar. And you didn't think to tell me I wanted to. But once you found out who I was, you'd never have said yes. You'd have walked away before I could even explain." She took a step closer. "You mean before you could use me?" His eyes flashed. "That's not fair. Neither is being blamed for crimes I didn't commit." He exhaled shakily. "You think this is easy for me? I've spent my life proving I'm not my father. Every deal, every lie, every dollar, just to protect something that doesn't even feel like mine anymore." She softened slightly. "Then why hide from me because you made me forget who I was supposed to be?" The words hit her harder than she expected. And when he looked up, his eyes weren't the eyes of a CEO. They were the eyes of a man standing naked in his truth. "I never wanted to hurt you, Gia," he whispered. "The night in Vegas wasn't a setup. You were supposed to be just a mistake. But you weren't." She stared at him, the man she'd loved, hated, and now finally understood. For a long moment, neither spoke. Outside, thunder rolled across the skyline. Finally, she said softly, "If everything between us started as a lie, how do I know what's real?" He stepped forward slowly, his voice breaking. "You don't. You just feel it." She didn't move as he reached for her hand. His touch was trembling, uncertain. But for the first time since she met him, it felt honest, and maybe that was enough for now. The morning of the press conference felt like war. Reporters crowded outside Whitmore Tower, their cameras glinting like bayonets under the gray Manhattan sky. Inside, Vaughn stood before a mirror, tying his black silk tie, with hands that shook for the first time in years. He had faced hostile boards, billion-dollar negotiations, lawsuits, and scandals, but nothing compared to what he was about to do. Sir Ian Harris said quietly, standing by the door. "The board is waiting. They're expecting a statement that distances you from Miss Coleman." Vaughn looked at his reflection. "Then they'll be disappointed. Vaughn, if you say what I think you're about to say, you'll lose the company. The shareholders. Let them take it." His voice was steady now, final. "What's an empire worth if you can't stand next to the person you built it for?" Ian sighed. "Then God help you both." Downstairs, flashes erupted the moment Vaughn stepped onto the stage. His jaw was set, eyes unreadable. Beside him stood Gia, in a simple navy dress, elegant calm, though her pulse raced beneath the surface. "Are you sure about this?" she whispered. He turned slightly, his voice low. "No, but I'm sure about you." The press room fell silent as Vaughn stepped to the podium. "Good morning." He began, his tone measured, but resonant. "There's been much speculation about my personal life in recent weeks. I won't be answering rumors today. Instead, I'll tell you the truth." Flashes crackled. Reporters leaned forward. "I am married," he continued, glancing at Gia. "To this woman. Her name is Gia Coleman, CEO of GLO Cosmetics. She's not my PR stunt, not my mistake, not a rumor. She's my wife." The room exploded in noise. Questions, shouts, chaos. Vaughn waited. When it settled, he said calmly, "And yes, the marriage was unplanned. We met by accident. We fought. We disagreed. We tried to walk away. But somewhere between all the mistakes, something real happened." He paused, his gaze locked on Gia. "She reminded me what integrity looks like when the world forgets it." Gia's throat tightened. He wasn't reading from any speech. These words came from somewhere, raw, unfiltered. A voice from the crowd shouted, "Are you in love with her, Mr. Whitmore?" The question sliced through the air. Vaughn looked directly at the reporter, then at Gia. "Yes," he said simply, "I am." Gasps rippled through the room. Gia froze, not because she doubted him, but because she'd never seen him look more certain in his life. In the back row, the Whitmore board members exchanged alarmed whispers. The empire had just trembled. That evening, the world was split in two. Half called her brave, half called her a fraud. Racial slurs flooded social media. Headlines screamed, "Whitmore, heir marries, gold digger," while investors panicked. Gia stood at the balcony of Vaughn's penthouse, arms crossed, trying not to crumble. She'd thought love could survive anything, but not this noise, not this hatred. Behind her, Vaughn appeared with 2 glasses of wine. "You should eat something." "I can't," she said quietly. "They're calling me everything but human." He set the glasses down, his voice low. "You knew it would be ugly." "I knew it would be hard," she whispered, "but I didn't know it would hurt this much." He stepped behind her close enough that his breath brushed her shoulder. "They hate what they don't understand. Let them choke on it. Easy for you to say. You were born with armor." He looked away. And you were born with fire. That's why I can't stay away. Gia turned toward him. Her eyes glistened. Why did you say it? Say what? That you love me. In front of the world. He exhaled, eyes meeting hers. Because it was the only truth I had left. Her lip trembled. You shouldn't have to burn everything for me. I didn't. He said softly. I burned it because I finally wanted something that wasn't built on lies. For a long moment, neither moved. The city buzzed beneath them, indifferent and alive. Then Gia whispered, and what if love isn't enough? Vaughn's hand brushed her cheek. Then at least it was real while it lasted. The next morning, Vaughn faced the board. 12 men and women in dark suits sat across from him, like executioners. At the head of the table was his grandfather, Arthur Whitmore, a monument of power, his voice cold as iron. You embarrassed this family, Arthur said. You jeopardized the company with your impulsive marriage to that woman. Vaughn's jaw tightened. That woman saved me. From what the old man snapped, from your own boredom, from the consequences of your privilege, Vaughn met his gaze evenly. From becoming you. The board gasped. Arthur's knuckles whitened. You think defiance makes you noble? You've disgraced your mother's name. Her name was Bertram Vaughn, said quietly, and you erased it, just like you tried to erase me. The silence that followed was glacial. Arthur finally said, Then you leave me no choice. You're removed from control, effective immediately. Vaughn rose slowly. You can take my title, my shares, my power, but you'll never control what she means to me. He walked out, leaving a stunned board behind a man stripped of everything but his truth. That night, Gia found him sitting alone in the dark tie, undone whiskey in hand. She stepped closer. You did it. He smiled faintly. I lost everything. No, she said gently. You just stopped pretending. He looked up at her eyes, tired, but soft. You think that makes me a better man? I think it makes you human. She sat beside him. The air smelled of rain again. For the first time in years, Vaughn didn't feel like the billionaire who ruled Manhattan. He felt like the man who fell for a stranger in Vegas and never recovered. Tell me something, she said quietly. If you could go back, would you still choose me? He didn't hesitate. Every time. She smiled through tears. Then maybe the lies were worth it. Outside, lightning flashed across the skyline. Inside, their world burned quietly, not in destruction, but in rebirth. 3 days after Vaughn's public confession, Manhattan's skyline glowed in the distance like nothing had changed. But inside the Whitmore penthouse, silence hung like fog. Gia sat curled on the couch, a blanket draped over her shoulders. The world outside had stopped making sense. Every channel replayed the same footage: Vaughn, standing at the podium declaring love for the woman the world refused to accept. She didn't know whether to feel grateful or terrified. Vaughn had traded his empire for her, and she didn't even know how to hold it for him. That night, the elevator chimed. Vaughn stepped in, drenched from the rain. His shirt soaked, his tie forgotten. I met with the lawyers, he said quietly, dropping his coat. Arthur's frozen all personal accounts. We've got maybe a month before they start seizing assets tied to Whitmore Holdings. Gia stood. You mean your life's work? He smiled faintly. No, my father's. She swallowed. And you're okay with that? I will be, he said, looking at her. As long as I don't lose you too. Before she could respond, the doorbell rang. A woman's voice followed, soft, honeyed, and familiar. It's me. Vanessa. Gia's pulse flickered. Vaughn's jaw tensed. He opened the door. Vanessa Whitmore. Tall, poised, perfect. stepped inside the kind of woman who looked sculpted out of privilege. Her honey blonde hair gleamed under the chandelier, her smile tight. "I came to check on you," she said sweetly, eyes darting toward Gia. "You've been avoiding the family." "I had my reasons," Vaughn said flatly. "I'm sure you did," she said. Then with a faint smirk, "So this is her?" Gia straightened. "Excuse me." "The woman who turned my brother into a martyr," Vanessa Vaughn warned. But she wasn't finished. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" she said, stepping closer to Gia. "You didn't just destroy his reputation. You made him walk away from everything he was born to protect." Gia met her gaze calmly. "He walked away on his own. Because of you," Vanessa's voice cracked. "You don't belong in our world. You never did." "Enough," Vaughn said sharply. "Vanessa, stop." She froze, tears shining in her eyes. "I loved you, Vaughn. My whole life I looked up to you. And then she came, and you threw everything away for someone who never lied to me," he said, "which is more than I can say for you." The words hit like a slap. Vanessa's face paled. "You think I'm the liar? Don't play innocent," Vaughn said quietly. "I know what you did." The air went still. What are you talking about?" Gia whispered. Vaughn turned toward her. "The financial leak. The investigation traced the source to an internal account, one registered under Vanessa Whitmore." Gia's breath caught. Vanessa laughed, brittle and trembling. "You really think I'd betray you? I think you already did." Tears streaked her face. "I didn't do it for money. Vaughn, I did it for you." "For me," he said bitterly. "You destroyed my company for me. I wanted to save you," she cried. "You were losing yourself to her, to this fantasy. You were meant to lead this family, not throw it away for someone who doesn't even understand what it costs to be a Whitmore." "Enough," he said, voice breaking. "I'm done letting the Whitmore name decide who I can love." Vanessa stared at him, shattered. "So that's it? After everything, after me, you choose her?" He didn't hesitate. "Yes." For a moment she looked like she might hit him, but instead she laughed, a sound sharp and hollow. "You think love will save you?" she whispered. "You've just killed everything that made you who you are." She turned to Gia, eyes cold. "And you'll watch him fall apart. You'll see what happens when a man trades power for love." Then she was gone, heels clicking, door slamming, silence flooding the room. Gia sank onto the couch, her hands trembling. "Vaughn, she's your sister." "She was," he said quietly, staring at the door. "But I don't know who that woman is anymore." He poured 2 glasses of whiskey. "I grew up with her. She was adopted after my mother died. We were close. Too close, maybe. But I never saw what she felt until now." Gia's voice trembled. "She said she did it to save you. Then she never understood me at all." He turned to her, his eyes softer now. "I'm sorry you had to hear that." "I'm not," she said. "At least now I know the truth." "Which part?" "That love isn't the enemy of power," Gia whispered. "It's just the only thing worth losing it for." He smiled, faint and broken. "You make losing everything sound poetic." "Maybe," she said, leaning closer, "because you still have me." He brushed her cheek with his thumb. "For now." "No," she said firmly, "for good." And when she kissed him, it wasn't a promise, it was a choice. A choice made in the ruins of everything else. Outside, thunder rolled again. But this time, neither of them flinched. The days blurred into nights and nights into silence. The once bustling Whitmore Tower now stood like a ghost of its former power. Vaughn had sold his shares, cut ties, and disappeared from the spotlight. To the public, he was a fallen heir. To Gia, He was simply the man she loved. They moved into a quiet brownstone on the Upper West Side. For the first time in years, Vaughn woke up without alarms, without board meetings, without power. But peace didn't feel peaceful. It felt like guilt. Every morning he'd stare out the window, watching the city pulse without him. Every night, Gia would hold him, as if her calm could drown out his storms. But something had changed in her too. The first time she suspected it was a Tuesday morning, nausea hit her mid-meeting. She brushed it off as exhaustion. By Thursday she knew. The test turned positive before she even finished praying. It wouldn't. Gia sat on the bathroom floor staring at the tiny blue lines. Her heart raced, her breath uneven. The irony wasn't lost on her. She who'd never believed in miracles was carrying one. Vaughn's child. The thought made her smile through tears, and then fear set in. He'd already lost everything once for her. If he knew she was pregnant, he'd give up even more. He'd fight, protect, burn, until there was nothing left of him. She couldn't let that happen. So she folded the test into tissue paper, hid it inside a book on the shelf. The Great Gatsby. A story about love, loss, and ruin. How fitting. Meanwhile, in a mansion across the city, Vanessa stood before Arthur Whitmore. She looked different now, her polished grace replaced by quiet venom. "You were right," she said. "He's weak. She broke him." Arthur's expression didn't change. He was always too much like his mother. "She ruined him," Vanessa hissed. "But I can fix it. If I help you take back control, will you restore what's mine?" Arthur studied her. "And what is yours, Vanessa?" Her lips trembled. His name, his legacy. Arthur's eyes hardened. "You can't have him, but you can destroy what he built." She smiled faintly. "Then we understand each other." From that moment, war began in silence. One afternoon, Gia returned from a doctor's appointment to find Vaughn pacing the living room, his phone in hand, fury in his voice. "They froze. My last remaining account," he said. "Arthur's pulling strings, and somehow Vanessa's helping him." Gia set down her bag, heart thudding. "She won't stop. She's not just after me anymore," he said. "They're going after GLO. Your investors are getting calls. They're spreading stories that you faked your background, that your success was bought." Gia's breath caught. "That's not just revenge. That's destruction." Vaughn looked at her, jaw tight. "Then we fight." But she could see it, the exhaustion beneath his fire, the fear he refused to admit. He was burning from both ends. "Maybe," she said softly, "we don't have to fight this way." He turned sharply. "You think we just let them win?" "I think," she said, voice trembling, "we choose what's worth losing." He stepped closer, eyes searching her. "What aren't you telling me?" She hesitated for a second too long. Gia, her throat closed. She looked down. "Nothing. Don't lie to me," he said gently but firmly. "Not you." Tears welled. "Vaughn, I'm pregnant." The world went still. He didn't move, didn't breathe. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked. "Say it again. I'm pregnant," she whispered. "You're going to be a father." He sank into the chair, hand covering his mouth. "God." She stepped closer. "I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to lose more. You've given up everything." "I couldn't let this, Gia," he interrupted softly. "This is the one thing that makes all of it worth it." Her eyes filled. "You mean that?" He looked up, smiling through disbelief. "More than anything." He stood, took her hands and pressed them against his chest. "You didn't ruin me, Gia. You saved me. You gave me something my family never could, a future that's mine." And for a moment, there was light again, fragile, trembling, but real. But light doesn't last long in the Whitmore world. That night, as rain lashed against the windows, Vaughn received an envelope slipped under the door. No name. Just a seal, the Whitmore crest. Inside was a single photo. Gia walking out of a clinic, and beneath it, a note in Arthur's handwriting. No child of hers will carry the Whitmore name. Vaughn's hand shook. His chest tightened until breathing felt impossible. He'd thought the war was over, but it had only just begun. The night after the letter arrived, the storm outside never stopped. Thunder cracked like a wound in the sky, and the city seemed to hold its breath. Vaughn sat alone in the dark, staring at the photo again and again. Gia stepping out of the clinic. Arthur's handwriting beneath it, cold, cruel, final. No child of hers will carry the Whitmore name. The words burned into his mind, each one a knife. He had spent his entire life trying to prove he wasn't like his father, but the Whitmore curse was alive, and it wore his grandfather's face. He didn't hear Gia at first. She was standing at the doorway, her hand resting gently on her stomach, eyes searching him. "Vaughn," she whispered. "You saw it, didn't you?" He nodded slowly. "Arthur's making threats." "It's not just threats," she said, her voice trembling. "He means it. He'll go after us after the baby." He looked up sharply. "Then let him try." "Vaughn, no," he snapped, standing. "I'm not running anymore." She moved closer, tears in her eyes. "It's not about running. It's about surviving." "Surviving isn't living, Gia. Living doesn't mean losing your child," she cried. "I can't risk it. I can't let your name destroy another generation." He stared at her, stunned, hollow. "What are you saying?" She took a shaky breath. "I'm leaving." The silence between them cracked like glass. He shook his head slowly, disbelief turning to pain. "No, you don't get to decide that alone. I have to." Her voice broke. "You can fight your family. You can fight the world. But I can't fight the man I love." He stepped forward, desperation raw in his eyes. "Gia, please don't do this. You're my home. You're—" She pressed a trembling hand to his chest. "Then let me go so you can keep that home alive." He tried to speak, but his throat closed. The storm outside drowned his voice. When she kissed him for the last time, it tasted like rain and goodbye. 2 months later. Vaughn hadn't seen her since that night. She'd vanished, no calls, no trace, no news. Even Ian couldn't find her. Whitmore Holdings had replaced him with a bored puppet, and Arthur had regained full control. Vanessa was reinstated as acting spokesperson, her smugness veiled behind polite interviews about family healing. But Vaughn wasn't healing. He was unraveling. He stopped attending events, stopped taking calls, stopped pretending. He spent his days at his mother's old townhouse in Boston, sorting through boxes of her journals, the only pieces of her life, untouched by the Whitmores. One afternoon, he found a letter yellowed with time tucked inside a book of poetry. It was addressed to him. "My dearest Vaughn, if you ever feel like love is your weakness, remember it's also your inheritance." The Bertrams believed in compassion, even when the world called it foolish. The Whitmores believed in control, even when it killed them. Inside, you are both. But one day, you'll have to choose which name you carry, not for power, but for peace. Mother. He stared at the letter for a long time. Then he made his choice. The family meeting was held in the marble hall of the Whitmore estate. Arthur sat at the head of the table, surrounded by board members and Vanessa. When Vaughn entered the room, fell silent. He no longer looked like a billionaire. No tailored suit, no bodyguards, no armor. Just a man in a dark coat with grief in his eyes and determination in his step. Arthur's voice echoed. You have no right to be here. I have every right, Vaughn said. The right of a Whitmore until today. Vanessa smirked. Finally giving up your throne. He turned to her, his tone flat. I never wanted it. Arthur's jaw tightened. Then what do you want my name back? Vaughn said. The one you buried. The board exchanged glances. Your mother's someone whispered. He nodded. From this day forward I am no longer Vaughn Whitmore. I am Vaughn Bertram. Arthur's face darkened. You dare dishonor this family. No, Vaughn said quietly. I'm freeing it. He laid a folder on the table. These are the final documents severing me from Whitmore Holdings. My shares, my assets, all returned. You'll never use me as a pawn again. Arthur's voice thundered. You're nothing without this name. Vaughn smiled faintly. Then I guess it's time to find out who I am without it. He turned to leave, but Vanessa's voice followed him, shaking. Where will you go, Vaughn? Back to her. To that woman who took everything from us. He stopped. She didn't take anything. You and Arthur destroyed yourselves. Then you'll die forgotten, she spat. He looked back, eyes steady. Better forgotten than hollow. And then he walked out, leaving the Whitmore name behind forever. 6 months later. In a small coastal town north of Boston, winter had softened into spring. A little bookstore by the harbor opened its door for the day. The bell chimed as the morning breeze swept in. Behind the counter stood Gia, her hair tied back, her belly now gone, her face peaceful for the first time in years. In a cradle beside her, a baby slept soundly, her tiny fingers clutching the edge of a soft blanket. Gia whispered, smiling. You have your father's stubborn lips, little one. The doorbell rang again. She turned and froze. Vaughn stood there, thinner, older, but alive. He was holding a bouquet of daisies, simple, awkward, perfect. Hi, he said softly. Her heart stopped. How did you find me? He smiled faintly. You left a trail of books. Every copy of The Great Gatsby you ever signed for GLO stores had the same note in the back. For whoever still believes in second chances. I figured that meant me. Tears welled in her eyes. You shouldn't be here. Maybe not, he said, stepping closer. But I needed to see the ending. She looked down at the cradle. You already did. He moved closer, eyes glistening as they fell on the baby. She's beautiful, he whispered. What's her name? Gia hesitated. Then softly, Hope. He smiled, a real quiet, trembling smile. Of course it is. He knelt beside the cradle, brushing a finger across the baby's hand. The tiny fingers curled around his. For a moment, time stopped. She doesn't know me, he said softly. She will, Gia whispered. When she's old enough, I'll tell her who you were. He looked up at her. And who's that? The man who chose love over legacy. He stood slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. Then maybe I can meet her again someday. Gia's voice broke. Maybe someday doesn't have to wait. He blinked. What do you mean? She stepped closer, heart pounding. I don't care about the Whitmores, or the Bertrams, or any name that ever broke us. I just want my family back. He exhaled shakily, emotion flooding his face. Are you sure? She smiled through tears. I've never been sure. He reached for her hand, and for the first time, she didn't pull away. They stood together, the baby between them, the wind outside carrying the sound of waves and forgiveness. Vaughn looked down at the sleeping child and whispered almost to himself, her name is Hope, because she's what we built from everything we lost. Gia leaned her head on his shoulder, and as the morning light spilled through the window, they both knew this was not a return to the past. It was the beginning of something new. Not Whitmore, not Bertram, just love. The end.